everyone. I'm Linda Nickell, and welcome to the Happiness Hour. Every week, photographers meet here to connect, inspire, and create. You'll find the schedule for upcoming sessions on my website at lindanickell.com. And while you're there, please consider signing up for our monthly newsletter. Tonight's guest is Tricia Zeigler. Trish is a Central Texas-based photographer with a love for capturing beauty wherever she finds it, whether on the back roads close to home or on her travels across neighboring states. Her images often celebrate rural life and the quiet charm of local landscapes, and the stories she pairs with them bring an added layer of warmth and connection. In tonight's presentation, A Choice to Wander, Trish shares stories and images born from that detour, moments that reveal how curiosity, openness, and a willingness to stray from the map can lead to deeper connections. If you're on Instagram, you can find her at TrishZATX, and I'll link that in the show notes. Welcome back to the Happiness Hour, Trish.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for being here. I won't be keeping you long. This is going to be kind of short, I think, unless I start rambling. So please tell me to stop rambling if I do. But what this presentation is about, it's just kind of a fun presentation. It's not really even about wow images, although there's a couple that I love that are some of my favorites. But it's just about this trip I took to Scottsdale, Arizona. I keep wanting to call it Flagstaff because I'm more familiar with Flagstaff. And but it was just a 2-day trip to Scottsdale. I tagged along with a friend of mine who goes on a lot of business trips. And so I would go with her. And while she was at her conferences all day, I was out running around the rental car taking pictures. And so this was just a little 2-day trip. And so what I did to prepare for the trip was I started, of course, going on the internet and researching things to do in Scottsdale. And then I came across some pages on Instagram, and there was this one man's page that I came across that he has a job where he travels all over Arizona. And he pulls over on the side of the road like I do around here and takes pictures. And so I saw 2 images that he had taken of 2 chapels. And I love old churches. I take pictures of churches all the time when I'm out running around. And so I thought, I want to go find those churches because they were small and quaint. And I thought it would be kind of fun. And so what I did was I looked at the proximity of these 2 towns. That there was a church in each town, and one was in Superior, Arizona, and the other one was in Casa Grande. And both of them were just about an hour's drive from Scottsdale. So the first day, I decided to go to Superior. And just a little bit of information about Superior. It was founded in 1882. It's the oldest town in its county. The population is only about 2,400 people. And it was founded as a silver mining town, and then it transitioned to copper mining. And I went back and saw some more recent information, and it's currently in the midst of a renaissance with the budding arts and culinary scene, that certainly wasn't the case when I was there. It was 2019 when I was there, so there wasn't much going on. So just to give you a little perspective of where I was at, first of all, I'll tell you that I tried to find the chapel and I could not find the chapel. I went down, I think, every road in this little town and I just could not find it. But I did find this main street. And so this section of the street, whoops, this section of the street, you can tell it's just vacant buildings, just nothing going on in them, kind of trashy all around them. They're boarded up windows. And then if you can see down the street, there's there's businesses down there that were open, parked cars and all, but up here there was nothing, which was absolutely just fine with me. Because I love taking pictures of old buildings and old abandoned buildings. So I just went ahead and spent some time here. This is what the whole block looked like. Just loved seeing all the different layers of plaster on the buildings. So I was just kind of working the scene here. This, I think, was a courtyard in between these buildings. I really couldn't tell because you couldn't see inside these windows. But I just, again, I just loved the layers and textures of because it kind of tells a history of the buildings. And so then I saw an opportunity to get a sunburst over this Lamina saloon. And so it was right about this time I was taking this picture that I hear this woman's voice behind me saying, well, I just had to walk up here and see what the heck was so interesting about these old buildings that you are in the middle of the street taking pictures of them. And so I turn around to see this petite older woman standing there with her hands on her hips, looking at me like I was crazy. And so I told her I just was a photographer and I really enjoyed going to old towns and finding old buildings like this. I found them interesting. And so she proceeded to tell me practically her life's history, very abbreviated history, and then wanted to know mine. And I just told her I was there visiting and that I was looking for this chapel and told her, I gave her a description of it and she knew where it was. And she told me that she'd give me the address and so that I could go find it. But anyway, then she went on to tell me that she was actually the person in town who gave the walking tours of Superior. And just started into her walking tour and um, gave me all the details. We really didn't walk the entire town or anything. We stood on the sidewalk and she kind of pointed out things, but just gave me her whole tour and then asked me to come on down the street with her to that area where I showed you that there were open businesses. Took me into all the little shops, introduced me to all the shopkeepers. Then we started making our way back, and she took me down a side street to show me one of the vacant buildings that she was actually in the process of renovating for a business. And so then we made our way back up here to where we started. And I asked her about this building because this building actually looked like it was just about to crumble and fall fall down. And she took me around to the front door where it actually had a plaque that listed everything that this business had, all the lives that had lived in this building. So it had been a bank, two different types of banks. Hing's store, which I think she said something about a thrift shop at one point. So I think that may have been that. And then it had been two clothing stores. Then she pulls out this big key ring that must have had, I don't know, it had 50 keys on it. And she said, I have the key to the building. You want to go in? The original vault's in there. And so I said, well, yeah, of course, let's go. And so she takes me inside and here's the vault. And then I did actually, it was ajar and I actually stepped inside of it and it was a big vault. So I guess it'd been there since whatever that date was on the plaque, since the 1900s. And so we kind of wrapped things up after that. And I told her I was going to go try to find the church. And she told me that I might find it interesting to drive up the road about 30 miles to the town of Florence, because Florence was the county seat and that there was a nice courthouse there, and I might enjoy taking pictures of the courthouse. And I had, on my way to Superior, I had seen a sign for an arboretum, and I really intended to go to the arboretum from Superior, but I thought, why not? I'll go to Florence. So I drove up there. This is a mural that I found just on my way out of town, out of Superior. And so I get to Florence, and this is the courthouse. And I mean, it's a nice building, but I I didn't find it interesting enough that I wanted to stay very long. It didn't have any peeling paint or anything. It looked a little too modern for me, honestly. And so I decided that I was just going to go ahead and double back and go back down to the highway and go to the Arboretum. I did find a couple of cool murals on my way out of town, but that was about it for me as far as Florence. So I got back on the road that was going to lead me back to the main highway and started seeing some interesting scenes with the saguaro cactus. And so I would stop and shoot out the window. And so I got to a place where there was enough room on the side of the road that I could safely pull off because I started seeing some clouds forming and saw some interesting landscapes and thought I'd like to just get out and get closer to get some good vantage points. So I walked down to where this barbed wire fence was, and I was here just kind of shooting all different directions. And then all of a sudden, once again, there's this voice behind me. And this time it's a man's voice. And I turn around to see a soldier racing down the hill towards me saying, "Ma'am, step away from the fence, step away from the fence." And I thought, okay, well, am I trespassing? Am I going to get arrested? What is this about? Um, so he gets up to me and he said, "What are you taking pictures of?" And I said, "Cactus." um, And he said, "Well, this is a restricted area and I'm going to have to ask you to leave. We do military drills out here on that land, and you just can't be here and you can't be taking pictures." He was very gruff about it. So I gathered up my stuff and started walking up, and he walked up with me and kind of cooled his jets a little bit. And with a little bit softer tone, he told me that if I drove down the road about 5 miles, I would find a place on the right that had a parking lot, and there was a dirt road next to it. And so I could I could either park and walk down the dirt road, or I could drive down the dirt road if I wanted to see some more cactus to take pictures of. And but I couldn't get off the road. Getting off the road was off limits. So I drove down and found the road, and I decided, well, okay, I'll go see what's down this road. And I ended up staying on this road for well over an hour, I think, because there were just all kinds of wonderful scenes like this, and the sky was getting filled up with clouds. And so there were scenes like this where I really wanted to walk up in here and get closer to get a picture of that mountain back there, but I followed the rules and I stayed on the road and just captured some more little pretty scenes all along that road. And this is one of my favorites that I got there. So I really appreciated getting that detour, really just to be able to get this image, because I really like this image. I mean, this was a fine specimen of a saguaro cactus, and against that blue sky, I just thought it was beautiful. So I get back on the road, and so by the time I got down to the main highway, where I would have had to turn to go to the Arboretum, it was really getting later in the day. And I really needed to make my way back to Scottsdale so that I could be there in time for dinner with my friend when she got out of her conference. So this main highway that I was on ran right through the Tonto National Forest. And I really hadn't paid attention to any of the scenery that morning when I was driving to Superior. But on the way back, I I decided to go a little slower. I had a little bit of time. I didn't have to rush to get to Scottsdale. And so I did pull over several times and just capture some beautiful scenes. This next one, I just loved all the layers here in this scene, all the different colors. And then this mountain range back here with that purple color. I mean, this was very little editing on this. This is actually how it looked. And then there were just more and more clouds building up in the sky too, which always makes me happy. So here's another scene of, of that mountain range. And so as I was driving, what I could see from the car way off in the distance was the end of this mountain range. And I mean, it's pretty far off. And it was starting to get later in the day. And so I was thinking that it was going to start to get to be golden hour. And how nice would it be if I could find a way to get over here to capture that at golden hour. I had no idea. I mean, I knew where I was as far as getting back to Scottsdale, and I was headed the right direction, but I didn't know the name of this mountain range to know what to Google to try to find a map to get there. So my strategy was that when I came up on a road that had a street sign on it, that I would turn off on that road and hope that eventually it would lead me in the right direction and I would kind of snake my way over to where I wanted to be. And so that was about, I don't know, it was a good 45-minute drive or so. And I just kept turning left, turning right, running parallel, going towards, getting closer to the mountains. And so I thought, well, I think this might work out. At one point, I ran into this. This was the entrance to, it looked like some big ranch. I thought it was just a really beautiful scene. And I would have liked to have hung out here a little bit longer. But I thought that since I really didn't know where I was, I better just get on my way. And so I eventually landed in a big subdivision that it was very modern subdivision, new houses, huge houses, lots of streets. And I just kept turning left, turning right. And then finally, I did find a place where I could find the end of that mountain range. And I was so happy that I did that because the the light in the sky and the light hitting this mountain and all the colors that were showing from that light was just amazing. Again, this is very little editing on this image, but the rocks and the orange of the clay soil and just that light on the mountain, and there weren't as many clouds as there were, back behind me from the way I had come, but I actually liked just a little bit of clouds that were here. I think it was just enough to give some interest to the sky and a little bit of color. And so it was worth the almost getting lost to go and find this place. And so I did decide to, you can see that the walking trail is right here. I did decide to walk up the trail a bit, so I could get maybe a better vantage point. And so I did get a little closer and got this shot. And then I still wasn't satisfied. I needed to get a little bit closer. And when I zoomed in with my lens, I was able to get this shot. And I just really loved this. I mean, this saguaro couldn't have been more perfectly placed in this shot. And just that light hitting that mountain was just gorgeous, just absolutely gorgeous. So that was a fun detour. And so a lot of none of this would have happened if that woman hadn't come up and started talking to me. And even though Florence was kind of a dry run for me, that led me to Army Man coming down and asking me to move, but then telling me another place to go. So that was a really good day. So the next day, my mission was to go to Casa Grande to find this little chapel, this little stucco chapel. When I saw this on that man's Instagram page, this is the one that really drew me in. That said, I just need to take a day trip when I'm in Scottsdale and go find this place. Casa Grande is a much bigger town than Superior. I think I saw that it's about 60,000 people. But little history of the chapel. It was built in 1935 and it served the congregation until 1961 when they built their present church. And that church was huge. It was right around the corner from this chapel and it was huge. I don't know how they were having services in this tiny thing up until then. And then sadly, I did go do a little research getting ready for this presentation. And that church, the big church that they built in 1961, had a fire at the end of 2024. And they actually, just this past July, demolished it. And so they're rebuilding it. And so I guess this little chapel's going to get busy again. But in between that, in between 61 and when this happened, recently they use this as a activity center and named it Murphy Hall. And then in 2014, they decided to go ahead and renovate it again back to its original purpose. And so it became a chapel again, and it is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. So here's the picture I got of the front of it. I just love, I love stucco buildings, houses, churches anyway, but this one is just really so charming. I love the way the front door that they have it niched and they have some tile inlay around the door. It's a big, heavy wooden door. And then they had this niche with a statue here. Love the bells. This was just such a charming scene. And I spent a lot of time out in front of it taking a lot of pictures. I checked the door and thankfully here, I forgot, I had these close-up pictures so you could get a better idea of how beautiful the entry door is. But the door was open and I was able to go in, and I just thought this is the prettiest little chapel. I love how they put wood on the ceiling and have the wood beams, and then even the industrial ductwork, I think, just makes a really nice look for this church. Stained glass windows. It's a very simple chapel, but I think it makes it so beautiful. The simplicity of it is just beautiful. And when I cropped this picture in, I didn't realize that until I did crop it, that there was a woman there in the front of the church, I guess having some quiet time to pray, and probably lit one of these candles. And I really felt like having her in this image really added to a lot to the scene. So when I left the chapel, I was going to go to the Arboretum, but I decided to stop at the visitor center, and I ended up spending probably, I don't know, well over an hour talking to the woman in the visitor center. And she gave me some recommendations on a place to have lunch, and then someplace else that I might want to stop on my way out of Casa Grande. So this was the lunch spot. And what was interesting about this place, it's called Dillon's, is that it's a restaurant, but it's also a cactus garden. And it also has a little museum in it. And it's just very charming. So I got there probably about 15 minutes before they were ending the lunchtime, but they let me come in, and they have inside and outside dining. And so you can see back here, this is part of the cactus garden, but this actually just went on and on and on. I don't know how many acres this was sitting on, but it was a huge garden with trails. So it's a really cool place. Um, the inside dining was kind of formal. It's kind of a cute place. I was the only person there. So I got to have a nice peaceful lunch there. And so from there, I went on down the road to this place that the woman in the visitor center told me about, the Casa Grande National Monument. So this, you really can't tell from pictures how huge this structure is. It's an adobe structure, and our archaeologists think that it may have appeared in 1350, built by Sonoran desert people, and was abandoned around 1450. And they really don't know what its purpose was. There was no, whoever the Sonoran desert people were, they didn't leave any writings of any type behind, and so they just don't know what the purpose was. But what they do know from going through the grounds was that they had built some kind of canal system from the lake that brought water through the desert to this area, I guess, to irrigate their crops. And so, that's pretty ingenious to have done that way back in 1350. Here's a closer shot of what it looks like and how it is starting to deteriorate, but that roof structure is keeping it pretty protected, they say. And then there were some pretty flowering cactus along some of the trails there. So from there, I finally made my way to the Arboretum, and it was worth the drive because it was a little bit longer drive since I was going from Casa Grande. But it's called the Boyce Thompson Arboretum, and it was built by, it was actually, this structure here was, his name was William Boyce Thompson. He was a co-owner of the copper mine in Superior. And he loved the area so much and just loved the landscape of the area that he decided to build a winter home on one of the mountains. And so this is part of that home. So it's the Arboretum was founded in 1924. It's Arizona's oldest and largest botanical garden. It sits on 372 acres, and about a third of that is dedicated to the gardens. And it has 4.7 miles of trails. I walked probably half of that 4.7 miles before I really needed to go and get back to Scottsdale. But they refer to it as a living museum because there's more than 4,000 species of arid land plants from around the world in this garden. And adjacent to this, or actually attached to this building, is a huge greenhouse where they do a lot of research on the desert plants. It's a beautiful place. So I have just a few pictures. I took a lot of pictures here, but I just have a few that I took. This just was amazing to me. I have never seen a prickly pear cactus this big. This was taller than me, probably had thousands of fruit on it. I've never seen one with this much fruit. And then the aloes also were just enormous and beautiful. This is just a section of this aloe garden that went all the way up the side of one of the hills there. And so that's it. That was my 2 days of exploring these little towns and going and finding little churches. I do have just a few pictures of a touristy thing that my friend and I did. We had a lot of time to kill before we had to go to the airport on that Saturday. And so we did go and visit the Butterfly Wonderland there in Scottsdale. This is an amazing place. When you walk in to the garden, it feels like you're walking through a rainforest. And they have big section of this glassed in area that you can stand in front of the glass and see all the chrysalis and actually see some of the butterflies emerging from them. And here's this is a big moth. Since Mika's in the room, Mika can probably tell us what this is. This was a great big, I'm assuming it's a moth. But what they do every day there is the all the butterflies that emerge from the night before and the morning, they gather them all up and they put them in a mesh container, and then they have a release of all of them. And so we were there when they did the release, and it was so amazing. There must have been 5 or 6 dozen, I don't even know, maybe more than that, butterflies, every shape, size, color. And it was just an amazing sight to see them all take off at once and go into the different parts of that rainforest garden. But even as much as I enjoyed the butterflies, I enjoyed these glass sculptures that were installed all throughout that garden. I'm a Chihuly fan, and I thought maybe this was a temporary Chihuly exhibit, but it's actually a local artist there in Scottsdale. Newt Grover is his name. He has a studio there, and he had about a dozen pieces all throughout this garden. And you really can't, these pictures don't do it justice because they're so enormous. I don't even know how they got them in there and assembled them. But they were just really strikingly beautiful against all the green foliage in the garden. And here's a couple more. And then we had seen some glass sculptures when we were out in Scottsdale going out to dinner. There was a shopping center that had huge pillars and had these glass sculptures on top of, which I thought was kind of odd place out in the open to have glass sculptures. But at night they light up and they're just gorgeous. And so it was a really neat experience to see that. So that's it.
Well, it's not it. I've got a couple of questions for you. They're
Okay.
easy. They're easy questions, though. Tell us, maybe you did and I missed it, but somebody's asking, what time of year did you take
Oh,
this
this
trip?
was October. It was the first week of October.
Okay.
And I'm telling you, that's got to be the best time to travel because everywhere I went, I felt like the world was mine. I mean, restaurants, nobody. Even at the ruins,
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing any people walking around there when I was there.
I
The
think
weather was perfect. So yeah, it was the first week of October.
it's probably because everybody was in Colorado chasing color.
True.
All right. Glenda's question, and this goes to your landscape photography or your photos. Did you do any focus stacking because you've got such clear foreground and backgrounds? Yeah, from front to back.
I
And
didn't even know what focus stacking was 6 years ago.
yeah,
But no, I didn't. But thank you for that.
yeah. Okay. Let me see. Oh, there's some nice comments in here. Y'all are such nice people. They really are. Okay, I'm not seeing anything else.
Okay.
Yeah, you survived another presentation.
Yeah, well, it was a short one, and it was a fun story. I don't know if I was able to articulate how fun and funny it was, but I mean, just from the woman in Superior coming up behind me and what the heck are you are you doing? And then
Well,
taking me on a tour of the whole town.
but Trish, you have to, people that don't know you personally. I know her personally. This happens to her all the time. She thinks, oh, it's another, stranger coming up to. There's always a stranger coming up to you, and there's always
I've
somebody.
never had a soldier run down a hill and say, "Ma'am, leave the area." That was a first for me. But he did soften up on the walk back up to the
Yeah,
cars.
he's probably thinking I frightened her. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to say thank you for sharing. I have heard some of these stories, but I hadn't seen any. Well, maybe I saw one or two photos because you had posted them either somewhere that I would have seen them. But um, it was nice to have it from start to finish. And I think that we can all agree that we can all take a pretty picture, right? But it's the stories that make that particular image unique. And the person that's telling and sharing is the cherry on the whole ice cream sundae. So thank you for giving that to us. So, and I'm being polite and nice about it, but I usually have to coax her, threaten her, put a mommy tone in my voice of like, you're just gonna do it and you just need to be okay with it. So um I'm looking at a note from Mika. That was wonderfully said, Linda. I don't know what she was referring to, but I'm sure it was the good parts.
Well, I say it every time. This is probably my last one, Linda.
Yeah, you can say it all you want, but what you say and what I want may be two different things. I'm just telling you that. All right, let me say thank you and thanks for coming and sharing and showing and being a good sport about it. All right, next week he's going to have to pronounce his name. I'm going to butcher it right now, and I'll probably butcher it next week, even after he tells me how to pronounce it. But Lalit Deshmukh will be here to share his presentation, Lyrical Landscapes. And if you are a landscape photographer or have a penchant for that type of photography, come and look and listen to some of his stories because his photography is beautiful. So until next time, go out and create something beautiful. And I hope that we see you again soon.